We're here to look at the winners and losers of the new Pokemon Champions metagame based on the additions by the 1.1 update. Last time we rushed a little bit, so this time we've waited a few weeks to see where the meta has gone before making our choices. Additionally, here's a quick clarification. For the purposes of this video, being considered a loser does not mean that the Pokemon is bad overall. It just means that it's worse off than it was before. Now, without further ado, let's jump right into our first loser, or rather losers, with Gholdengo and Mega Metagross. These cases of loserdom are mild enough to where they share the number 5 spot, but they were still afflicted. If not extremely, then notably. First, Gholdengo. Its signature Steel Stab, the 120 base power Make It Rain, previously carried with it the drawback of a -1 special attack drop after each use, as opposed to the -2 of the 130 base power moves Draco Meteor, Overheat, and Leaf Storm. But now Make It Rain has joined them. It maintains the 120 base power, but also drops special attack by 2 after each use, which many had already thought to be the more warranted, obvious effect from the beginning, with the effect Gholdengo had on metagames to begin with. Sure, Make It Rain was slightly weaker than Draco Meteor and company, but it also even had the benefit of 100% accuracy. Oh wait, they also lowered its accuracy to 95, which isn't that bad, but you know, if it ain't 100% accurate, it's 50% accurate. Now, it's not like using Make It Rain at -1 special attack was especially dangerous, but there is a world of difference between -1 and -2, and this is a significant change for making Gholdengo just a little bit less able to rain down its power on the opponent. It's much easier to take 2 hits from it when the second is outright half as strong as the first, and when dealing with something as dangerous as Gholdengo, it's a big help. Being punished harder for using its strongest move makes it much more weary of throwing it around, though it'll still be excellent of course, just as if it were a dragon using Draco Meteor. It can struggle with Sun and Rain teams that are meta, especially Sun, but at the end of the day, it's still Gholdengo. Meanwhile, Metagross gained Heavy Slam in Gen 8, which would have made Mega Metagross absolutely terrifying, with a higher attack, speed, and Tough Claws boost, but Champions took away Heavy Slam. Now, it's not like Mega Metagross is exactly stuck with Meteor Mash, it sometimes even uses Iron Head for Steel Stab, and neither option is anything to sneeze at, with such power and neat secondary effects. However, both are notable downgrades from what could have been, as Heavy Slam Mega Metagross would have dealt astonishing levels of damage, is even significantly heavier than its base form, so it really would have had an easy timeout weighing its opponent sufficiently to dish out the maximum 120 base power, though even 100 puts it nicely ahead of Meteor Mash. Perhaps Game Freak knew that they'd be making it too efficient of a one-hit KO machine. After all, Mega Metagross is already a near-perfect Pokemon, as it's fast and bulky, in addition to the amazing move pool it wields for its excellent power level. Heavy Slam Mega Metagross would have almost certainly been in the winners category, had it existed, but alas. Now we move on to our first winner with Grimmsnarl. But before we get into how Grimmsnarl spices up the metagame, let's have some paprika beef and pepper goulash macaroni thanks to today's sponsor, Factor. Look, we're all busy people. For me, I'm usually either editing footage or tilt queuing on Pokemon Champions. Whatever it may be, sometimes I forget to eat. That's where Factor comes in. Factor delivers chef-crafted, dietitian-approved pre-cooked meals so you don't have to worry about what to eat or what groceries to buy. Factor is ready in just 2 minutes via your microwave, and they have an enormous variety of meals. You can even choose the different type of meal plans, which are keto, calorie smart, veggie vegan, protein plus, or chef's choice. This wild mushroom filet mignon is actually super delicious, and the mushrooms are sauteed to perfection. And just to spice things up, I also got this Cajun shrimp with andouille gravy. I can't wait to try all of these meals, honestly. Also, they do smoothies and juices too. So thanks for the delicious strawberry banana smoothie as well, Factor. So if you want to support the channel and save time while eating delicious pre-cooked meals, head to factor75.com or click the link below and use code FalseSwipeFB50 to get 50% off your first Factor box plus free breakfast for 1 year. That's code FalseSwipeFB50 at factor75.com to get 50% off plus free breakfast for 1 year. Before, Sableye was running around, pulling off all sorts of priority mayhem. First turn Fake Out, then Prankster for the rest, mostly dual screens, as well as the ever-valuable Encore. But now here comes Grimmsnarl to just about completely one-up it. Sableye definitely still has its advantages, and they are far from insignificant. Ghost typing blocking opposing Fake Outs, Will-O-Wisp a status, making an opposing target go second with Quash, and the ability to set Rain Dance. But Grimmsnarl is not only a far superior Pokemon overall at the task of faking out and setting dual screens, it enters a metagame that's perfect for it. The timing is especially auspicious with the reintroduction of Light Clay to ensure its screens are extended in duration. But this isn't even the only support Grimmsnarl can provide. Instead of screens and Light Clay, it can sometimes assist against its own fairy weakness with Rosalie Berry. Always crucial, but especially valuable considering the meta presence of one of the other winners in this video. Once equipped with Rosalie, Grimmsnarl leans into its own extraordinary support move pool. The pivoting and opponent weakening of Parting Shot, slowing opponents down with Scary Face, weakening their special defense with Fake Tears. Even its attacking stab has support capabilities, as in addition to Spirit Break, dealing solid damage off of Grimmsnarl's base 120 attack, it also lowers the opponent's special attack. Grimmsnarl just trips up the opponent's way of dealing damage every which way, and it's incredibly equipped for taking on the current metagame, which in many cases struggles to damage it reliably and stop it from repeatedly doing its thing in an almost Incineroar-esque fashion. Wait, Incineroar? Well, we'll get to that later. For now, with Grimmsnarl's greatness aside, we move on to the next loser, which is none other than Annihilate. Annihilate, a generally threatening Pokemon with its solid attack, amazing dual stab combination, and good speed and great bulk, all of which tended to culminate in devastating wins off of the strength of its signature stab, Rage Fist, which started at 50 base power but gained an additional 50 with each move that Annihilate took direct damage from, until it reaches a Be Still My Heart 350 base power, although it would be an unstoppable one-hit KO machine far before it reached that point. With special defense investment and bulk up to boost defense and attack, of course, Annihilate would easily shrug off opposing hits and Rage Fist everything into oblivion, with the boosted power and thus recovery of its secondary stab, Drain Punch, helping keep it healthy. What was really insane about Rage Fist was that Annihilate could get these boosts at any point in the game. It switches into a U-turn that barely dinks it early on, then switches back out and Rage Fist is already up to 100 base power. It could power itself up at any time, then come back and dish out the pain. This also had huge potential on a Choice Scarf set, which compensated for a lack of bulk through greater speed with which to unleash its boosted Rage Fist, and its other excellent moves, of course. So what puts Annihilate here in the losers list? The fact that Rage Fist has been nerfed. Now the plus 50 boost it gets per each hit it takes resets upon switching out. If Annihilate wants to use its powered up Rage Fist, it has to stay in after taking the hits that boost them. Now this isn't a make or break deal for Annihilate, which is why it's only number 4 here. In the faster paced VGC, it's not going to be switching in and out of battle and taking as many hits as it might in singles, so it's not so affected as to have it had a huge loss, but at the same time it is a significant drawback and makes one of its strongest weapons much harder to pull off. If it wants to use the move that auto-deletes everything, it has to stay in and commit once it's taken damage, which in retrospect makes much more sense mechanics-wise, as Rage Fist's original conceit seems outright absurd, being able to switch in, take minimal damage, then come back and be rewarded with outright damage for it later. Annihilate now finds itself much more limited, though it has a lot more going for it in VGC. It didn't even necessarily need to run Rage Fist before, as it primarily used a Choice Scarf set, which could use the move quite well, but whose playstyle didn't lend itself to getting it boosted as much as it'd like. But now the Scarfer might not exist at all, given that it primarily excels at using Final Gambit alongside its enormous base HP, ideally for a favorable 1-for-1 trade. But Annihilate has lost Final Gambit as well, which makes that no longer an option. Another great limitation, just like how Annihilate's bulk up set flexibility has been limited. But since Scarf might still be the preferred Annihilate set, it's a relatively mild drop-off, as it's still a solid Pokemon, but a drop-off it certainly is. Now over to winner number 4, we have Mega Floette. Mega Floette was already a major threat, spamming its Fairy Aura boosted Fairy Stab off of astonishing special attack to Kingdom Come. Now it's gotten even better, not to outrageous extents, but it certainly remains on the up and up. It primarily benefits from a phenomenon that also assists Grimmsnarl, yet Mega Floette takes it to more directly destructive ends. It absolutely loves the fact that there are very few steel types which can stand up to the metagame, which is so utterly dominated by Sun and Rain. This makes Mega Floette incredibly easy to support, simply by pairing it with the strongest playstyles in the metagame, which you probably would have done anyway. Of course, there are great steel types. In addition to the aforementioned Gholdengo and Mega Metagross, there's also King Gambit, but these get absolutely decked by Rain's new superstar, Mega Swampert, and the primary Sun Setter itself, Mega Charizard Y, as well as the threats it and the other Drought Setter, the non-Mega Torkoal, enable, like Chlorophyll Venusaur. Of course, you can't bring either Mega Pert or Megazard Y and Mega Floette to the same match, but they do pair incredibly well on on the same team, and assist Mega Float in being even freer to throttle everything else with sometimes as many as 3 Fairy Stabs, from the dependable single target power of Moonblast to the spread damage of Dazzling Gleam to the recoil heavy but unreal burst damage of Light of Ruin. It's basically the competitive equivalent of just loading your in-game Charizard with fire moves, and it just got even more of an effective strategy to do that. Now, speaking of fire Pokemon, we move on to Incineroar, but also King Gambit, so really we're speaking about dark Pokemon. This duel hasn't been completely put out to pasture, but they have been knocked down from the throne quite a bit, with the metagame's new threats matching up so well against them. Primary among these is Mega Staraptor, which is tough enough to deal with for most Pokemon, let alone these two getting completely tooled by it. Mega Raptor's dark resist and solid physical bulk means it shrugs off King Gambit's Sucker Punch, while its stab close combat doesn't just decimate the duel, but does so to the tune of boosting its own bulk thanks to Contrary. So you can't even necessarily bait it to drop its bulk and thus threaten it as you might with other close combat users. Incidentally, Contrary means Incineroar is actually worse than just destroyed by Mega Raptor. It's actually an outright liability, with its Intimidate actually boosting Mega Staraptor's attack. Now, being crushed by one of the metagame's top new threats isn't necessarily a deal breaker, but being crushed by multiple of them starts making things much more difficult. Both Incineroar and King Gambit are absolutely decked by Rain's new Mega Swampert, which in turn makes Rain, a playstyle neither were particularly good against, even more common than it already was. Now, Incineroar and King Gambit are still going to be great Pokemon, but they're certainly no longer as automatic in their success, especially Incineroar, which has arguably never had a greater challenge than Mega Staraptor. Only competitive Milotic could really come close, and even that didn't quite crush the whole meta the way Mega Staraptor is currently. And when bringing it into battle, would wind up powering up one of the biggest threats in the metagame even further. That in turn enables more Pokemon that would be checked by Incineroar as Mega Staraptor's allies, extending the effect further than Mega Staraptor itself, since Incineroar can't come out to stop them, as it doesn't want to make their ally Mega Staraptor even more dangerous than it already is. But for all this talk about Mega Staraptor, it's not just it or Mega Swampert knocking Incineroar and King Gambit down. In fact, both Pokemon don't do particularly well against the next winners either, Mega Raichu X and Y. The two Mega Raichu are tearing through the metagame something fierce. Mega Raichu X's Electric Surge has single-handedly brought terrains back to the metagame, which is all the more excellent for how there are no other terrains to challenge it. Mega Raichu X makes excellent use of the terrain itself, whether off Volt Tackle off of its higher attack stat, or Rising Voltage off of its decent special attack stat, and it provides superb support with a fast fake out, and crucially outspeeds and threatens Mega Charizard Y's Lights Out, which is an incredibly useful buffer against one of the metagame's most dangerous threats. It also makes Mega Raichu X a solid option for rain teams, both in threatening the opposing Sun Center, since Rising Voltage also decks Torkoal, and in how its electric terrain supports Archaludon even further by powering up Electro Shot. As a bonus, Mega Raichu X speed ties Mega Staraptor, challenging another metagame staple, though it doesn't exactly take close combat well. But that brings us to Mega Raichu Y, which, despite not providing the team support of electric terrain, is arguably even easier to fit on a team. It is much faster, leaving Mega Staraptor in the dust, which cannot be overstated. In fact, it's so fast, it outspeeds even the base 120 Sneasler and Mega Frostlash, which is enormous, and is part of what makes Mega Raichu Y a much more frightening offensive threat in its own right. The other part stems from its superior coverage between its perfectly accurate Zap Cannons and Focus Blast, as well as coverage for grounds and Grass Knot if it desires. Zap Cannon is also a tremendous offensive tool because even if it doesn't KO something, it still leaves its target paralyzed, making it easier to deal with for its teammates. And those are just its attacks. It's absolutely overflowing with support options as well. Its fake out is even faster, and its amazing speed allows it to pull Encore off with aplomb as well, in addition to the eternal utility of Protect. Both forms of Mega Raichu Y, with their blend of speedy offensive power and team support, are among the most valuable new additions to the metagame. X leans more supportive, and Y leans more offensive, but both share traits of the other playstyle. Now, from 2 winners to number 3 to 1 loser at number 2, we have Mega Mawile. Mega Mawile has been knocked down quite a bit from its previous tenure in VGC, and this is largely because Trick Room isn't nearly as consistent a playstyle in Champions as it had been before. With Mega Mawile being dirt slow, it really needs Trick Room to unleash its incredible power. This is not to say that Trick Room isn't still a major force, of course it is, or that Mega Mawile has no place in the metagame, because that's certainly not true, but it has taken a severe hit, and that's because Trick Room as a playstyle isn't nearly as consistent currently. It's lacking some of its most reliable setters. There's no Porygon 2, no Cresselia, and Mimikyu is much less effective for having its disguise nerfed in Gen 8. Trick Room is now a more explosive playstyle, and while the upsides are certainly there, this brings with it greater risk. Hard Trick Room teams have declined in Champions, and while half Trick Room teams are excellent, indeed the face of the playstyle, Mega Mawile still struggles on account of the 2 drought users in the tier. Mega Charizard Y is incredibly difficult for Mega Mawile to deal with, which is a dynamic dating back to when both first hit the scene in 2014, while there's also the fact that opposing Trick Room teams tend to run Torkoal, which also completely dominates Mega Mawile. There's no denying Mega Mawile's power and how crushing it is if it can be pulled off, but pulling it off has become increasingly challenging. Now on to winner number 2, we have of course Rain and Mega Swampert. We've mentioned it so much thus far, and at long last, whoop, here it is. Rain teams have become even better than they already were, coming to really dominate the metagame thanks to the addition of Mega Swampert, which in turn has also improved greatly since we last saw it in Gen 7. Mega Swampert would already throttle much of Champions' metagame without any chances, but what's really helping it is the move Swampert received in Gen 9, Wave Crash, whose 120 base power is a far cry ahead of the Waterfall that already made it frightening back in Gen 6 and 7, and enables the next level of shattering strength Megapert needs to really dish out the one-hit KOs under Rain. Mega Swampert's impact on the metagame thus far has been seismic. Just look at the losers we've mentioned so far, and the number 1 loser we're about to mention, and see how almost all of them have been knocked down from their previously high standard simply because of how effortlessly Mega Swampert obliterates them. And this applies to much of the rest of the metagame as well. It's not just that Mega Swampert hits so hard, but that it's such a good hit taker itself, which really completes its utter domination of a metagame staple like Garchomp. It's also not easy to change the weather against it. Torkoal of course fears high horsepower, but if it's willing to go without Ice Punch, Mega Swampert can also opt to run Rock Slide to crush Mega Charizard Y. And that other method of slowing down physical offense, Incineroar, can't do very much either, but when both stabs hit it super effectively, and one is boosted by Rain, making it so strong that even Incineroar can't pull off its tricks of withstanding super effective stabs. Mega Swampert is at the very top of the metagame, defining and destroying it with ease, and only one Pokemon can really be considered ahead of it. However, before we get to that, we have to get to our number 1 loser, and that is Sneasler. So it must be said, Sneasler is obviously still very, very good. However, as mentioned in the intro, this isn't about whether a Pokemon has become outright bad, but how much it has dropped relative to its previous status. And the reason Sneasler is here is because of how one patch was enough to completely send it toppling from its previous place of completely ruling over the metagame. As with nearly all the other losers on this list, Sneasler is utterly devastated by the presence of Mega Swampert and Mega Staraptor. Mega Staraptor is particularly bad news for Sneasler because as a fighting type, it becomes competition, and most of the time, Staraptor is going to be the one players go with. Sneasler's fast fake out has also been newly eclipsed by Mega Raichu Y, throwing a severe dent in the uniqueness of its support capabilities. Even Sneasler's strengths are less valuable now. Yeah, it thrashes Incineroar and King Gambit, but so does the general direction of the metagame. Besides just getting hit so hard, Sneasler is also much easier to counter now. For example, Mega Dragalge completely stifles it, and there are ground types around every corner, shutting it down harder than 30 Rock's own Liz Lemon. Again, Sneasler still has great support capabilities, but these have been both challenged and stifled from almost every turn in the new metagame. Now, before we move on to our number 1 winner, we must quickly mention one of these ground types, Garchomp. It's not quite a full-on quote-unquote winner in the sense of having been buffed to any significant degree. It was amazing before and continues to be now, but what's new is that it's now number 1 in usage according to Pikalytics at the time of this video, reflecting the player base really locking into just how great it is against everything. Now to our number 1 winner, and really what could it be other than Mega Staraptor? That champion of Sinnoh, to the pride and joy of Gen 4 fans everywhere, Mega Staraptor has almost completely reshaped the metagame in its image. As you may have noticed from the constant allusions to the losers in this video primarily suffering from how badly they get decked by it. So we'll go over it one more time. Mega Staraptor does it all. It's powerful, it's fast, outspeeding Mega Charizard Y is incredible for a Pokemon of its strength, and it's even got good natural bulk which very quickly spirals out of control, not just for its pre-Mega Intimidate, but for how its post-Mega Close Combat, thanks to gaining both Stab and the Contrary ability, becomes a tremendous offensive weapon that also doubles as Cosmic Power, making Mega Staraptor fast, strong, and incredibly difficult to break. It really is the complete package even before you get into how astonishingly synergistic Close Combat and Brave Bird or Dual Wing Beat are with each other, or how Roost reinforced Mega Staraptor's bulk even further, or for how it completely throttles the previous meta standards, as you may have noticed. Mega Staraptor is a physical attacker that absolutely relishes the sight of Incineroar, positively begging it to come in and have Intimidate wind up boosting its attack. And if the opponent doesn't wind up bringing Incineroar to the match, that's its own win, leaving Mega Staraptor in a unique position to enable all manner of teammates. And this is before even taking into account how Tailwind, whether set by a teammate or Mega Staraptor itself, means that even if you have a faster threat, like say your Mega Raichu Y or Mega Frostlass, that can quite easily be circumvented. The dream of Staraptor in some improved form, returning to dominate the competitive scene is being carried out beyond most Sinnoh fans' wildest dreams as Mega Staraptor dominates the metagame. It is unquestionably the #1 winner of Pokemon Champions 1.1. And thank you so much to our Platinum patrons. Thank you to Alex Sable, Anthony Belval Renault, Daniel Isbeast, Corman, Don Creek, Eric Dissing, Espion Lover, Funky, Glitcherton, Howl, Jack G, King Yabber, Nightfall, Megamon VGC, Mojo Game Slayer, Nurse Jake, One Penguin to Rule, Pretzel SP, Palamute, Schmooter, Seagulls Incorporated, Soljiro Sakura, Spavoon, Skylaria, Soros and Croxon, Shiwei Miji, Stoneface Colin, Tyler, Kiboflu, Wardine, Zathor for their major support of our videos.